My wife secretly planned to sleep with another man, just to give her sister a baby. I refused to be humiliated. Hey Reddit. My world came crashing down the moment I accidentally discovered my wife's darkest secret, a secret so twisted that I still struggle to wrap my head around it. We've been married for 6 years, and in that time, I truly believed we had built a strong partnership based on trust, love, and mutual respect. Sure, like any couple, we've had our ups and downs, but nothing could have prepared me for what I stumbled upon just a few days ago. It all started when my wife, Emily, began acting strangely around the house. She was more distant, constantly glued to her phone, and oddly defensive whenever I asked what was on her mind. At first, I chalked it up to work stress or maybe something with her family, particularly her sister, Sarah, who had been struggling with infertility for the past few years. Emily and Sarah have always been incredibly close, almost like best friends rather than siblings. I admired their bond, even if I sometimes felt like Emily prioritized her sister's problems over our marriage. But I never imagined that bond would lead to something so absolutely devastating. One night, Emily fell asleep on the couch with her phone still unlocked in her hand. I know I shouldn't have snooped, that's not the kind of husband I am, but something deep in my gut told me I needed to see what was going on. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife. There were endless text conversations between Emily and Sarah, spanning months. At first, it seemed innocent, just the usual sisterly venting about life, relationships, and Sarah's ongoing fertility struggles. But then, as I scrolled further, the messages took a darker turn. My heart started racing as I read Sarah practically begging Emily to help her have a baby, not through adoption, not through surrogacy, but by finding a man to get pregnant for her. And the worst part? Emily was actually considering it. The plan was as twisted as it sounds. Sarah couldn't afford expensive fertility treatments or surrogacy, and apparently, she didn't trust random sperm donors. So, their brilliant idea was for Emily to cheat on me, get pregnant, and then secretly hand the baby over to Sarah after giving birth, all without me ever knowing. I felt like the walls were closing in around me as I kept scrolling. Emily was the one who suggested not telling me anything because she knew I would never agree to it. She called me too traditional and too proud to ever go along with the plan. My own wife was discussing humiliating me behind my back, like I was some kind of obstacle standing in the way of their sick little scheme. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking, and my vision blurred from the sheer betrayal I was reading with my own eyes. The messages went on, planning how Emily would find the right guy, how they'd time everything perfectly, how she'd pretend the baby was mine if I ever found out. They even joked about how I was too trusting to ever notice. I sat there in complete disbelief, staring at the woman I'd promised to spend my life with. The woman who was supposed to be my partner. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and the only thing stopping me from waking her up right then and there was the sheer disbelief that this was actually happening. How could she do this to me? How could she even consider something so disgusting? I spent the entire night sitting in silence, watching her sleep peacefully while my entire world crumbled around me. By morning, I was numb. I went through the motions, acting like everything was fine, but inside I was screaming. I needed answers. I needed to hear her admit it to my face. But I wanted to give her the chance to come clean, to tell me the truth without me having to confront her first. For the next 2 days, I waited for some kind of confession, some small crack in the perfect little mask she had been wearing. But nothing. She carried on like everything was normal, smiling, kissing me goodbye in the mornings, and snuggling up next to me at night like she hadn't been plotting to humiliate me behind my back. The sheer audacity of it all made my blood boil. I finally snapped when I overheard her on the phone with Sarah, whispering about how much time they had left in finding the perfect guy. I barged into the room without warning, and the look on Emily's face when she saw me standing there was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. She knew I had found out. Her face went pale, and she stammered out some pathetic excuse about how I had misunderstood everything. But I didn't give her a chance to spin her lies. I laid out every single text I had read, word for word, watching the panic spread across her face as the truth unraveled. At first, she denied it. Then she tried to play the victim, crying, begging me to understand that she was only trying to help her sister. As if that somehow justified planning to destroy our marriage. The worst part? She genuinely seemed to think what she was doing wasn't that bad. She kept saying it wasn't cheating because it would have been for a good cause. As if that made it any less of a betrayal. As if humiliating me and treating me like some clueless fool was perfectly acceptable as long as it was for her sister's benefit. I don't think I've ever felt such pure rage in my entire life. I told her right then and there that I would never forgive her, that the moment she even entertained the idea of sleeping with another man behind my back, she destroyed everything we had built together. But the part that still haunts me the most is that she didn't even seem sorry. She was more upset about getting caught than about what she was actually planning to do. I packed a bag that night and walked out, leaving her sobbing on the floor. I've been staying at a cheap motel ever since, trying to process everything. She's been blowing up my phone nonstop, alternating between apologies and trying to justify what she did. Even Sarah has been messaging me, begging me not to throw my marriage away over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what they're calling this, like it's just some minor disagreement instead of the most gut-wrenching betrayal of my entire life. Part of me wants to file for divorce immediately and never look back. But another part of me, the pathetic part that still loves her, keeps wondering if maybe there's some way to fix this. I keep replaying every moment of our marriage in my head, trying to figure out when she stopped seeing me as her husband and started seeing me as some disposable pawn in her twisted little plan. I don't know what to do. My entire world feels like it's been turned upside down, and I can't tell if I'm more heartbroken or furious. But one thing is for sure, I will never let anyone humiliate me like this. Not my wife. Not her sister. No one. I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow to discuss my options, but I haven't told Emily yet. I don't even know if I want to tell her. Part of me wants to walk away and let her spend the rest of her life wondering if I ever truly knew, if I ever found out just how deep the betrayal went. But another part of me wants to confront her one last time, to hear her admit, out loud, exactly what she was planning to do to me. Because if there's one thing I know for certain, it's that I'm not going to be the fool in this story. Not anymore. Update. I never thought my life would take such a turn, but here I am, sitting in a lawyer's office, trying to make sense of the mess my wife created. After I walked out, Emily bombarded my phone with calls, texts, and voicemails, all desperate attempts to explain herself, to justify what she did, to make me believe that it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But no matter how many times I read her messages or listen to her voicemails, it all sounded like one thing: excuses. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry that she got caught. The day after I left, Sarah called me. At first, I ignored her, but she was relentless, leaving voicemail after voicemail about how I was ruining everything over a simple misunderstanding. That word, misunderstanding, made my blood boil. I finally answered, and the moment she started with her manipulative, sugar-coated nonsense, I lost it. I told her exactly what I thought about her disgusting plan, about how she and Emily treated me like some disposable idiot who didn't deserve basic respect. And you know what she had the audacity to say? She told me that I was being selfish, that Emily was just trying to help her, and that if I had any love for my wife, I would see that she was caught between her marriage and her sister. Caught between her marriage and her sister? Like she was some kind of victim in this? Like she wasn't the one who willingly planned to cheat on me and lie to my face? I told Sarah to go to hell and hung up. That should have been the end of it, but then Emily showed up at my motel. I had barely gotten 2 hours of sleep when she pounded on the door, crying, begging me to let her in. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, and she threw herself into my arms, sobbing like I had just died. For a brief moment, the part of me that loved her, the part of me that spent 6 years believing in our marriage, wanted to comfort her. But then I remembered why I was here. I pushed her off me and told her to cut the act. I demanded that she admit everything to my face, no excuses, no justifications, just the cold, hard truth. And for the first time, she finally did. She admitted to everything. She confessed that she had been considering going through with it, that she and Sarah had spent months discussing the best way to make it happen, that she knew I would never approve and that's why she never planned to tell me. But the worst part? She still didn't think she had actually betrayed me. In her mind, she hadn't done anything wrong because she hadn't acted on it yet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like talking to a stranger, someone who looked like my wife but wasn't the woman I married. I asked her one final question: did she ever stop for even 1 second to consider me in all of this? Did she ever think about how I would feel? How this would destroy me? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I told her I was done. I told her our marriage was over. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw actual fear in her eyes. Another update. I officially filed for divorce. The moment I handed those papers to my lawyer, I felt something I hadn't felt in days: relief. I had spent so much time drowning in betrayal, rage, and heartbreak that I hadn't realized how much weight I had been carrying. But as soon as I took that step, it was like I could finally breathe again. Of course, Emily didn't take it well. The moment she was served, she showed up at my motel again, this time screaming and demanding that I talk to her. She went from apologetic to angry within seconds, accusing me of throwing away our marriage over something that didn't even happen. She kept saying that we could fix this, that she would never actually go through with it, that it was just talk between her and her sister. But I wasn't buying it. If I hadn't found out, she would have done it. If I hadn't read those messages, she would have gone through with the plan and destroyed me in the process. And the fact that she still refused to take responsibility for what she had done only made my decision that much easier. I told her she needed to leave, that there was nothing left to discuss, that the only thing keeping me in contact with her was the legal process. That's when she dropped the final bombshell. She blamed me for all of this. She said that if I had just agreed to help Sarah from the beginning, if I had been more understanding, then none of this would have happened. I laughed in her face. I told her she was pathetic, that she had officially lost whatever tiny shred of respect I had left for her. And then I walked away. That should have been the end of it, but of course, Sarah had to make things worse. She sent me a long, guilt-tripping message about how I was a monster for ruining my wife's life over a mistake. She told me that Emily was falling apart without me and that I was proving I never really loved her. I didn't respond. I was done with both of them. Final update. The divorce is in progress, and I've gone no contact with Emily and Sarah. The moment I blocked them both, it was like I finally regained control of my life. No more manipulation, no more gaslighting, no more feeling like I was drowning in betrayal. Just peace. I moved out of the motel and into a friend's guest house for now while I figure out my next steps. It's strange waking up without Emily next to me, but you know what? It's also freeing. I spent 6 years loving someone who clearly never respected me. And now that I'm out, I see just how blind I was to all the red flags. Looking back, I realize that Emily always put Sarah's needs before our marriage. It wasn't just about this betrayal, this was a pattern. She was never truly on my side. And the moment I stopped being convenient for her and her sister, I became disposable. I won't lie, this whole thing shattered me. But now that I'm on the other side, I know I made the right choice. I refuse to be with someone who thinks so little of me. I refuse to be someone's backup plan. And most importantly, I refuse to let anyone humiliate me the way Emily tried to. For anyone reading this who has ever been in a situation where they felt like they were being manipulated, lied to, or treated like an afterthought, walk away. You deserve better. I know I do. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believe it.